Long live OEM wheels. This is every angle I can think of on the topic of wheels, OEM and aftermarket, and why stock wheels might be the right choice for you. I've scratched and given rock rash to OEM and aftermarket wheels alike. This is not coming from a place of prejudice. I've had both, but let's take a closer look. One of the common differences you're gonna hear touted about OEM versus aftermarket wheels is weight. Now, while I'm not familiar with the race car side of the wheel debate, where you're trying to make a car as light and as high performance as possible, I am familiar with this debate when it comes to miles per gallon on vehicles that you're going to be driving on the road and then off-road. People will claim that aftermarket wheels are lighter and will therefore save you MPGs, lower rolling resistance, so on and so forth. I did a lot of research to see if I could actually find this to be true. Honestly, the weight savings just didn't look that drastic. I saw aftermarket wheels that were heavier and aftermarket wheels that were lighter. Take, for example, my stock wheel that you can see behind me. That's a 16 by 7 inch Toyota OEM wheel. According to old stuff that I dug up on Tacoma World, it weighs 27 pounds. A Method 305 16 by 8 6 on 5.5 is going to be 26.5 pounds. In other words, like the same exact weight. To be fair, that wheel is 1 inch wider. When I looked up other late model Toyota wheels, I saw a lot of numbers around 22 and 23. Toyota's done some work to improve the weight on their wheels and make them more competitive with aftermarket options. However, a Vision Man X 398 wheel, 6 on 5.5, is 29 pounds, 2 pounds heavier than my OEM Toyota wheel, same specs, same bolt pattern. The whole weight thing is just negligible. For an off-road vehicle, you're not really gonna notice a difference if you got an extra pound or you lose a pound on each corner of the vehicle. It does matter, but it's not substantial and it's not worth losing sleep, time, or money over. Bead locks were significantly heavier. Even in the 16 by 8 sizes, I was looking between 30 and 35 pounds, with some coming in even heavier. I found one steel bead lock wheel that was 43 pounds, 16 by 8. That's a heavy wheel. That's something you are gonna notice. If you go up by like 10, 15 pounds on each corner, your MPG is gonna suffer. Really, the weight of the tires that you choose to put on these wheels is gonna matter more. The further the mass is from the hub, from the center axis of rotation, the harder it is to slow down or change the speed of it. So that refers to braking and acceleration diminish as you add more and more weight further and further from the hub. So a wheel matters, but a tire matters more because that weight is further away from the axis of rotation. The obvious argument for stock wheels that most people point out is price. It is simply cheaper to keep what was already on the vehicle when you got it. Not only is the price low, but the performance is nearly identical. Most aftermarket wheels just aren't that special. Save for wheels like Method's bead grip technology or some of the stuff that Icon's coming out, anything short of a bead lock just isn't that special. It has a flashy design, it might have a tucked away valve stem, but other than that, they're gonna hold air, they're gonna bolt up to your vehicle, and they're gonna drive. And that's all wheels have to do. So it's really hard to make any performance gains on wheels unless you need them for specific tire fitment or they have bead locks. I don't drive my truck to be seen driving it, so I just have what's on the truck. Can I go camping? I'd rather scratch these than scratch something I just paid $1,000 for. The valve stem protection on stock wheels may not be up to par with some of the aftermarket options that you can find. This goes the other way. There are some aftermarket wheels that are terrible for valve stem protection from companies who don't know what they're doing and aren't producing wheels that are actually intended to be used off-road. They just look tough. Valve stem is only slightly recessed. If I was on the wrong trail, if I hit the wrong rock, if my tire was in the wrong spot, I could break a valve stem. And that is a true and fair point against stock wheels because in general, that valve stem protection is not as good as some of the aftermarket options out there. If you look this up on Google, you will see people talking about how steel wheels, you can like bend them back into shape if one of them busts. So, you know, you kind of bend the wheel, hit it on a rock too hard, you can in theory weld onto it or hammer it back into place because steel is pretty malleable and will take that kind of abuse, whereas aluminum or any other kind of alloy does not tend to be as workable. Steel is king in that sense. If you're the kind of person who's bending your wheels off-road, you probably also need a bead lock. And now we're having a different conversation because these are not bead locks. Another problem with stock wheels is usually the width that you find. So like my stock wheel, 16 inches tall, 7 inches wide. This is going to limit me not only in my width, but ultimately the height that I can go. If you want 35s, you're usually on 17s. You're not going to be on a 16 by 7. On 16-inch wheels, you can still fit a 32, a 33. There's one 34-inch size that'll fit on a 16 by 8. Nothing for 35s. That 7-inch wide wheel that I have won't really mount anything that's wider than 10.5 or 11 inches. depending on the height of the tire. Now, you can also make this mistake the other way. If you get a 9-inch, 10-inch wide wheel, you're not mounting a 235 or a 9-inch wide tire to it. Not gonna happen. The widths have to match within a certain range. You can use tiresize.com. That's what I use to see what kind of tires are recommended for what kind of wheel width. My current tires are 235s. The stock size was 245 wide, so having that 7-inch wide wheel, not a problem. I could go up to 255, 265 pretty comfortably and have a ton of options. So many people start with stock wheels that when you want to look up how does this tire fit on this vehicle with stock wheels, you are going to have more information to go off of than any other wheel and tire combo. Everybody starts with stock wheels. Everybody. So when you go on to Tacoma World or Tundras.com or T4R.org or whatever you're going on to, you're going to have a wealth of information to pick from. There's going to be a million guys with the same wheels as you, and they're going to tell you, this tire looks this way, this tire needs this kind of cutting, this tire rubs on my upper control arm. If you start looking at aftermarket stuff, you are going to have to do a little more guesswork, more legwork, or just find out on your own. There's such a simplicity about the stock wheels too. You don't have to guess at lug nuts, you don't have to guess at back spacing, you don't have to guess at the diameter is gonna clear your brakes. You can just put new tires on and that's your fitment. There you go. You can get to a point where when you're fitting tires, you need wheel spacers or you need an aftermarket wheel with greater back spacing in order to clear certain suspension components or avoid rubbing on the frame or wheel well. I get that. On a lot of vehicles, by picking the correct tire and doing the correct modifications in terms of clearancing, cutting body mounts, so on and so forth, you do not truly need to change from the factory wheels to achieve the fitment that you're looking for. Some of you will say, what about strength? Aren't aftermarket wheels stronger? And I think you're right, aftermarket wheels are stronger. Now I looked on Tacoma World, Tundras.com, Toyota4Runner.org, Toyota Nation, I looked on Toyota's own website, parts dealers, I looked everywhere, eBay, couldn't find stamps, pictures, nothing. I don't know what my stock wheels are rated for. The best guesses I have seen is 2,200 pounds. As I'm editing this video, I'm looking for photos of these wheels, and what do I find? I find an eBay listing with the back of the wheel stamped with the load rating for my wheel. So 2,100 pounds is actually what we're looking at on this specific wheel. So the guesses were right. Somewhere above 2,000 pounds is generally what these wheels are going to be rated for on some kind of light truck or SUV. But you have to understand, whatever the payload of this truck is, those wheels are designed to fit within that hierarchy of load rating. So the truck, the rear axle weight, eventually the wheels show up in that equation as well. If you're not exceeding payload, you should never have to worry about the wheels. If somehow you are regularly and safely exceeding payload, maybe you've upgraded your rear axle or some other kind of modification, you would probably want stronger wheels than what we have from the factory. Most of Method's wheels that I looked at were like the 2600s, so about 400 pounds more. That'd be another 1,600 pounds in payload over a stock wheel. But if you can't safely reach that payload the way you haul up the truck, it doesn't really matter. And also I realized I like how these wheels look. Old wheels look old, but at some point when you're driving an old truck, you kind of still want it to look old. The older a vehicle gets, I think the more appropriate the stock wheels start to look. As this truck has aged, maintaining that heritage, that vibe that Toyota imbued it with when it debuted has actually become more and more important to me. If I had bought this truck in 2002, I would have torn off those wheels, put on whatever was popular at that time, and had a great time. But now that this truck is 20 years old, there's something in me that wants to look at that truck and still see that original Toyota commercial. I want to maintain the vision that this truck was built with. It's purely an aesthetic thing. Keeping the stock wheels has helped make the truck look clean, well-aged, and cared for. It doesn't look molested or ruined. This is just a normal truck you might find in the mountains that is all about utility and practicality, and that's how the stock wheels fit in. If I had to put aftermarket wheels on this truck, I'd have to be very picky, and I'd probably, at minimum, pick something that had bead grip. I want performance if I'm gonna shell out all that cash on wheels. Otherwise, I'll spend the money on other things like gas and getting out there and having a good time, not buying flashy wheels for my truck. I have little interest in spending that amount of money just to have zero performance gains. Now, there are real exceptions to this. If you're going to need very specific wheels to get very specific fitment on your vehicle, stock wheels kind of go out the window. I would always pick properly backspaced wheels as opposed to getting wheel spacers. I just prefer that system. I think it's easier to deal with less moving parts. So I get it. If you're watching this video and you're like, but this, I can't fit, can't do it, won't. I get it. Even on this truck, going up taller in tire size and wider is not a guarantee on stock wheels. Often you do need an aftermarket wheel just to notch it out another ½ inch or so in back spacing. And at some point, if you want 35s or 37s, you're just not gonna do it on a 16x7 inch wheel. This truck on 235 wide tires feels great, it feels stable. I off-road it, I camp out of it, I daily it. Everything works. I'm sure that these wheels' days are probably numbered. They may not last me forever, and I may eventually upgrade. But in over the 2 years that I've been camping, off-roading, and daily driving, they haven't given me an issue. They've been reliable, I like them, and I'm going to continue to use them for the foreseeable future. I've talked a lot about wheels. If you want to talk about tires, go check out these videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.